Rita, a young girl burdened by the weight of her mother's impending blindness, finds herself caught in a desperate situation. With a heart full of hope and love, she sings in public spaces to raise money for her mother's treatment. Her determination leads her to an unexpected encounter with a stranger who offers her a chance to perform at his bar and promises help for her mother. However, as she embarks on this new journey, Rita faces unforeseen dangers, including a terrifying abduction. Yet, in the midst of darkness, kindness prevails, and Rita is saved by a compassionate stranger. As her mother's condition improves, and with renewed hope for the future, Rita realizes that love and resilience can overcome even the most difficult challenges. With her family and newfound friends by her side, she dares to dream of a brighter tomorrow. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Oh, merciful Lord, please do not forsake my dear mother. I implore you with all my heart to grant us the means to afford her treatment. Let her eyes heal so she can once again see the vibrant colors of the flowers she cherishes so deeply. Let her regain the strength to work and perhaps even find joy in drawing again. Do not let her world fall into darkness, dear Lord. We desperately need your guidance. I have faith that you hold the power to change everything in this world. With trembling hands, Rita made the sign of the cross and pressed her lips against the tiny icon that stood on her bedside table. She climbed into bed, the weight of her worries pressing heavily on her small frame. Yet, as soon as her head touched the pillow, sleep gently embraced her. In her dreams, she found herself clothed in pure white, standing barefoot on a hill bathed in golden light. Her voice filled the air, pure and resonant, as she sang her heart out. Below the hill, a crowd had gathered, people, so many people. They clapped and cheered, throwing flowers and soft toys toward her in celebration. Rita's heart soared, a wave of sweet warmth cascading through her, filling her from head to toe, like a comforting, thick warmth that enveloped her soul. And then she saw her. Her mother standing at a distance, her face radiant with joy, waving enthusiastically. Rita's heart skipped a beat as she realized her mother could see her clearly, beautifully. Her mother's eyes, once clouded with sorrow, now shone with pure happiness. Energized by this vision, Rita's voice grew even stronger, carrying across the earth with a clarity that seemed to pierce the heavens. But just as her song reached its crescendo, the sound of chirping broke through. The alarm clock. It was morning. Time to wake up. Rita stretched, savoring the lingering warmth from her dream, the feeling still pulsing through her veins like a soft, glowing light. With renewed determination, she whispered to herself, "I will sing in the square today. I will earn the money for Mom's treatment." The resolve in her heart was firm as she climbed out of bed, her thoughts consumed not by her lessons, but by the song she would sing. Songs so moving that passers-by would pause, tears glistening in their eyes, and fill her small tin box, her cherished box that had once held her childhood treasures, with money that would bring hope to her mother's weary eyes. Rita Torres, what has captured your mind today? Senor Dass's stern voice cut through her daydream. Startled, she rose from her seat, eyes cast down in apology. "I'm sorry, Senor. My head. It's been hurting since this morning." His brow furrowed with concern. "Should you visit the doctor?" Rita quickly shook her head, forcing a smile. No, I'm fine, really." She sank back into her chair, gripping her pen with renewed focus, ready to jot down the lesson as it was dictated, though her mind still wandered far from the classroom. When she finally returned home, the familiar scent of home-cooked food greeted her. Her mother sat at the kitchen table, peeling vegetables with care. Without hesitation, Rita crossed the room and pressed a gentle kiss to her mother's cheek. "Hi, Mommy," she whispered softly, love and determination filling her heart once more. "Hello, my sunshine. How was school?" Melina's voice was soft, filled with warmth, despite the weariness etched into her every word. "Everything's fine," Mom Rita replied, her tone cheery as she knelt down beside her mother. "Let me help you with the vegetables. How are your eyes today?" Melina sighed, a sadness shadowing her face. "Baby, I'm so sorry for causing you all this trouble. What will happen to us when I lose my sight completely?" Rita stopped peeling and looked at her mother with fierce determination. "Don't even think that way, Mom. You won't go blind. We'll find the money for your treatment, and you'll see everything again, the world in all its colors and beauty. I promise." A faint smile touched Melina's lips. She gazed at her daughter, her heart aching with both love and guilt. How had she been blessed with such a wonderful child? And yet, what could she possibly show Rita, should her vision ever return? A life of scarcity and struggle? Melina despised herself for how things had turned out. She had given Rita so little. Fear had kept her from daring to leave this small town, to even try for a better life in the capital or a bigger city. Years had slipped by working in the local library, and now, with her failing eyesight, she had to stop working altogether. The deterioration was accelerating, and only expensive treatment could save what little vision she had left. But where would they find the money? It was just the two of them in this vast, indifferent world, clinging to each other for survival. Melina couldn't help but feel like an unbearable weight on Rita's young shoulders. Her sweet daughter, not even 16, should be out living her life, enjoying her youth. But how could a girl possibly find joy when burdened with a blind mother? Day after day, Melina's thoughts swirled with desperation, trying to figure out a way to scrape together even a few coins. She was ready to do anything, but so far, no solution had come to her. As evening fell, Rita changed into her favorite sundress, her fingers tracing the fabric as if it held the power to summon courage. She grabbed the cookie tin, a gift from a kind soul named Rosa, who her mother had cared for years ago. Thanks to Rosa's generosity, they now had a place to call their own, small and worn, more like a shack than an apartment, but it was theirs. Before that, Rita and her mother had moved from one rented room to another, constantly uprooted with no chance of securing something better. But at least now they had this modest home. The square was nearly empty when Rita arrived. It was the middle of the week, and rain had fallen several times already that day, keeping most people indoors. She stood near the shopping center, placing the tin at her feet. A wave of fear washed over her. Singing here, exposed to the eyes of strangers, made her feel vulnerable. But there was no time for fear. Her mother needed help, needed it desperately, and Rita couldn't afford to hesitate any longer. She took a deep breath and began to sing. At first, her voice was soft, trembling with uncertainty. But as the familiar melody wrapped itself around her heart, she grew bolder, louder, her voice gaining strength with each note. The world around her faded away as she sang, her focus narrowing to the music and the emotions it stirred within her. This always happened when Rita sang, especially when the song seemed to resonate deep within her soul. And there were many such songs that told of heartache and hope, of dreams and despair. Songs that could make even the hardest hearts soften, if only for a moment. As the twilight began to cast its soft, fading light, a curious crowd began to form around the young woman whose melodious voice drifted through the air. Rita, with her enchanting presence and heartfelt songs, captivated the onlookers, drawing them into her world of music. Despite their evident enjoyment of her performance, no one felt compelled to contribute even a solitary coin to her modest collection box. Rita sang with a fervor born from desperation, performing only 3 songs before the stern figure of a security guard from the nearby shopping center approached, his demeanor brusque and authoritative. "What's going on here?" the guard demanded, his voice harsh and commanding. "And you, young performer, you better pack up and leave immediately, or I'll have no choice but to report you to your parents." With a voice barely above a whisper, Rita responded, "I'm not doing anything wrong. I simply need some money." The guard's eyes, cold and devoid of empathy, narrowed as he sneered at her. "If you're looking for money for new lipstick, you should ask your father," he mocked. "Get going now, or you'll have to deal with the police." The crowd, now disillusioned by the interruption, began to scatter. Rita, with a heavy heart, gathered her empty box and began her weary journey home. However, an unexpected impulse halted her steps. She glanced towards the river, where a platform by the shore often served as a gathering spot for local youth. Though nearly deserted that evening, it offered a glimmer of hope. Rita, determined and undeterred, settled beneath a large, sprawling tree and began to sing once more. As her voice wove through the crisp evening air, couples strolling nearby began to take notice. A few coins were tossed into her collection box, and some young women, feeling a twinge of jealousy, hurried to steer their partners away from the mesmerizing singer with the beautiful voice. From a tender age, Rita had been enamored with the art of singing. What began with childish tunes from beloved cartoons evolved into a passion for the songs she heard on the radio or television. Her mother, Milena, had always been her greatest supporter, frequently exclaiming, "You have the voice of an angel. A bright future lies ahead of you." Yet the anticipated future seemed elusive, presenting itself not as the vibrant and promising vision Milena had hoped for, but rather as a dull, unremarkable reality fraught with struggles and occasional hunger. That evening, Rita's earnings amounted to a meager euro, a paltry sum that felt almost mocking in its insignificance. She wondered what she had hoped for. This was not the bustling capital with its myriad art enthusiasts, but at least here, no one dared to shoo her away. As Rita made her way home through the quiet church, she slipped a few coins into the donation box. She crossed herself, whispered a brief prayer for solace, and continued on her path home, choosing to keep her troubles to herself for now, not wishing to burden her mother with her current plight. From that day forward, Rita made it a point to visit the riverbank daily. Though her efforts occasionally yielded some modest earnings, it became glaringly apparent that it would take decades of such work to accumulate enough money for her mother's critical treatment. Desperation began to seep into her resolve, pushing her to confront the harsh reality that she needed a paying job, regardless of how grueling or demanding it might be. Her motivation was steadfast to ensure her mother could see the light of day, rather than be engulfed by perpetual darkness. "I'll sing just one more time, and then I'm done," Rita whispered to herself, her voice laced with weariness, but tinged with a glimmer of determination. She began to sing the song that her mother adored to the point of obsession. The melodious strains of her voice floated across the river, carried effortlessly by the gentle evening breeze. The riverbank was known for its exceptional acoustics, making her final chorus resonate with an ethereal beauty. "I miss you like violets miss the rain. You were given to me by fate. So said the fortune teller, so said the fortune teller." As Rita bent down to retrieve her empty collection box, her gaze fell upon a man in an impeccably tailored business suit approaching her with purposeful strides. Her heart sank, anticipating yet another encounter that would force her to abandon her fleeting hope. She braced herself for his disapproval and prepared to leave. "Wait," the stranger called out, raising his hand in a gesture of pause. "You have the voice of an angel. It's the most exquisite I've ever heard. Your talent deserves to be heard by the world." Rita's lips curled into a grateful smile, though her heart was heavy with other concerns. "Thank you, sir, but that's not what I need. I'm looking for something entirely different." "What is it that you need?" "It's nothing," she replied with a sigh, her shoulders slumping slightly. "It's my own problem, and I doubt there's any way to resolve it. Sometimes it's better to share your burdens rather than keeping them locked inside. Who knows, perhaps I can assist you in some way, and you might be able to help me too." "Help you?" Rita's curiosity was piqued. "Yes, you. If you're willing to perform at my bar, despite your youth," he said thoughtfully, scratching his chin. "Are you offering me a job?" Rita's voice quivered with a mix of disbelief and elation. "If so, I could save enough for my mother's treatment." Treatment? Are you ill? No, not me. It's my mother. She's rapidly losing her sight, and the medical costs are overwhelming. I see. It's fortunate you spoke up. My uncle is a renowned microsurgeon working in the capital, the man revealed with a reassuring tone. Rita's eyes widened in amazement and hope. Really? Could he possibly help my mother? Perhaps. If you're willing to sing at my bar, we can discuss this further. Your talent could make a difference, and we might just find a way to solve your mother's predicament. ... You know nothing about me, and perhaps you don't need to know. But your passion, your vibrant dancing, and your heartfelt music have touched me deeply, the man said with an enigmatic smile. His applause resonated with genuine admiration. Can you share more with me? Rita, feeling the weight of her struggles momentarily lifted, flipped her ponytail over her shoulder and began to sing once more. Her voice, imbued with emotion, wove a poignant melody through the twilight air. I won't sacrifice anything for you, nor will I give my hand for my mother's sake. Only music, my eternal love. I have no time for fleeting romances, and this song is especially sorrowful. It always makes my mother cry when I sing it. Rita said, as if emerging from the depths of despair with each note. She lowered her voice to a tender whisper. Don't die, my dream. Don't fade away, hope. Life will never be as it once was. I will now light a lamp before the ancient icon. I can grasp everything in life, but betrayal, deceit, I cannot understand those, she sang softly, her voice trembling with raw emotion. She appeared almost ethereal, like a nymph caught in a moment of pure enchantment. What's your name? Asked the man, his gaze filled with deep appreciation. Rita, she replied, her heart fluttering with a blend of hope and anxiety. So are you hiring me? Rita's face illuminated with a hopeful smile. You're going to set this bar on fire with your talent, Rita. Within a month, people will come from the capital just to enjoy a beer and listen to your magnificent voice, the man said with conviction. But am I not suitable after all? Rita's eyes glistened with a mix of disappointment and concern. It's not that. It's just that you're so young. But don't let that worry you. You know, when I put on makeup, I look 20, he said, chuckling softly. You're incredible. I can't let this opportunity slip away, Rita exclaimed, her excitement palpable. I'll personally ensure your mother gets the best care at the clinic, and I'll also make sure to look after your uncle. Just keep singing. Do you know the bar named Insight? The man asked, a hint of pride in his voice. Of course. It's one of the few places around here with such a charming name. I adore its tiled roof. It reminds me of a fairy tale cottage, Rita responded, her enthusiasm evident. Thank you. It's a creation of my father. I want to restore its former glory. My primary business is in the capital, but I'm managing the bar here for now. People have suggested selling it, but I refuse. I want it to thrive. Imagine the magic it will radiate with you performing within its walls. It will be extraordinary. I'm ready, Rita declared with renewed determination. First, I need to speak with your mother, Alberto said, his tone serious yet considerate. No, please don't do that. My mom can't handle any added stress, Rita implored, her voice trembling with concern. Then how will she get the treatment she needs? I don't know. We need to figure out something. You could tell her you're from social services and that this is some sort of special promotion or assistance. Just make her believe that she's getting the treatment for free, Rita suggested, desperation tinged with hope in her voice. You're incredibly mature for your age. I wish my daughter were as grown up as you are. All right, I'll pose as social services. Let's arrange it for tomorrow after 3. Give me your address, Alberto said, pulling out his phone and ready to make a note. Rita provided him with her address. "By the way, my name is Alberto," he said, handing her a €50 note. "This is for you." Rita's eyes widened in astonishment. "Take it, dear. You gave me a few moments of extraordinary joy with your singing. That's worth more than you know." "Thank you," Rita said sincerely, quickly placing the banknote into her tin collection box. "I'll be expecting you tomorrow. I'll tell my mom that social services will be coming. I hope everything works out." "It will, Rita. Everything will work out for you," Alberto assured her with a reassuring snap of his fingers. "See you tomorrow, Siren." "See you tomorrow," Rita echoed as she hurriedly made her way home. On a sudden impulse, she decided to stop by the store to pick up her mother's favorite coconut candies. "Mama, I've brought you something special," Rita called out cheerfully as she entered their small, dimly lit home. Her mother didn't respond. Rita's heart sank as a wave of anxiety washed over her. She walked into the tiny kitchen to find her mother sitting at the table, her head resting heavily on her hand. "Rita, where have you been?" Melina's voice was weak, tinged with worry. "Oh, I was just..." "Mom, it doesn't matter. Let's have tea with these candies you love," Rita said, trying to sound upbeat despite the knot of fear tightening in her stomach. "My friend treated me." "What's the matter with you? Are you in pain?" "Just the usual, sweetheart," Melina said, rubbing her nose wearily. "Right," she murmured almost inaudibly. "We're out of painkillers." "Mama, let me give you a head massage. It will help you relax and ease the pain," Rita offered gently. "My wonderful girl," tears streamed down Melina's face. "You deserve so much more, a better mother, a better life." "Mom, stop it. What are you talking about?" "I don't need another mother. You're the best mom in the world, and don't you dare get gloomy. We're going to beat this strange illness of yours soon," Rita said firmly, her voice brimming with determination. As she gently combed through her mother's hair, she added, "Rita, you have such skillful hands, just like your angelic voice," Melina said, her lips curving into a soft, appreciative smile. Rita held on to the hope with all her being that her mother would soon regain her sight and that they would overcome this challenge together. The following day, just after 3 p.m., Alberto arrived at the doorstep, carrying a folder filled with documents. He was accompanied by a charming young woman named Lourdes, who was a waitress at the bar. Rita ushered them into her mother's room, her heart pounding as she realized she had forgotten to prepare her mom for the social workers. Alberto and Lourdes played their roles with such convincing professionalism that every detail was executed flawlessly. Melina was taken aback by their presence, but given her deteriorating sight, she had little choice but to trust their assurances. "Mom, I'm heading to the store," Rita said, trying to sound casual as she walked out with Alberto and Lourdes. The evening air was crisp as they made their way together. Lourdes chatted amiably, adding a touch of warmth to the otherwise tense situation. "Rita, I've scheduled the appointment for tomorrow. I'll personally take your mother to the clinic. Are you prepared if she needs to stay there starting tomorrow?" Alberto asked, his voice steady and reassuring. "I've been ready for this since yesterday," Rita replied, her gratitude evident. "I can't express how thankful I am. I won't be able to repay this kindness until I retire, but I'm prepared to do whatever it takes." "You're too modest," Alberto said with a smile. "With a voice like yours, you're destined for great things." As the trio continued their conversation, Rita's heart felt lighter, and she allowed herself a moment of hope for the future. Melina remained at the clinic, her night filled with an emotional whirlwind. After receiving her first injection, she had undergone a series of intricate procedures that left her both physically and mentally exhausted. Meanwhile, Rita found herself in an entirely different world, preparing for her performance at the local bar. The notion of stepping into such an unfamiliar territory left her feeling a deep sense of trepidation. Everything had been meticulously arranged. Her mask and attire were in place, thanks to Lourdes' thoughtful suggestion. First and foremost, Lourdes explained with a mischievous glint in her eye, the mask will make it much harder for anyone who might recognize you if someone familiar shows up. Secondly, it adds an air of mystery about your age, which is also a bit of fun. Her laughter danced through the air, lightening the mood. Rita, though anxious, found comfort in Lourdes' plan. "That sounds great," she said with a hopeful smile. "Do you think you could come up with a stage name for me?" "Absolutely," Lourdes replied with enthusiasm. "How about Nightingale?" "Why Nightingale?" Rita inquired, curious. "Well, a nightingale is a bird renowned for its beautiful song. You sing with a grace that surpasses any bird's melody," Alberto chimed in, his voice full of admiration. "Moreover, nightingales sing in the darkness, before storms or at the crack of dawn, just like the ambience of our bar." Rita's eyes sparkled with newfound confidence. "Nightingale it is, then. Are you prepared to stay awake past your usual bedtime? You still have school tomorrow." "Oh, that's right, tomorrow's a holiday," Rita responded, her excitement growing. "I'm ready to stay up all night if it means helping my mom get the treatment she needs." "You're truly a gem, Rita, showing such dedication to your mother's well-being." Lourdes praised her with heartfelt sincerity. Rita's voice softened, filled with profound affection. "She's the only person I have in this world. I love her more than anything else. I'll do whatever it takes to see her healthy and happy again." Oh, Lourdes, her eyes filled with unspoken understanding, simply enfolded the young singer in a warm embrace, gently patting her on the back. Rita felt a wave of emotion surge through her, her eyes brimming with tears that she quickly wiped away, careful not to disturb the carefully applied stage makeup. The plan was for Rita to perform a modest set of 2 or 3 songs, but the patrons of the bar were so captivated by her presence that they refused to let her go. They eagerly began making requests and showering her with bills, a gesture of their appreciation. Each song she sang was met with more applause and encouragement, and Rita, buoyed by their enthusiasm, continued to sing with increasing fervor. It wasn't until around 3 in the morning that Rita finally made her way home, utterly exhausted and parched. The thought of having the following day off from school was a comfort, allowing her the luxury of a much-needed rest. The arrangement was to work at the bar on Fridays and Saturdays to manage her school responsibilities, with the possibility of taking on more shifts during school holidays. That night, as she drifted into a deep sleep, Rita dreamed of delicate little birds perched gently on her hand, their tender chirps filling the air with a soothing melody. The dream was so enchanting that it brought tears to her eyes, evoking a profound sense of tenderness and joy. Her slumber was interrupted by the ringing of her phone. It was her mother, Melina, calling with a voice that radiated warmth and cheerfulness. "Hello, my sunshine." Melina's voice sparkled with positivity. "Hi, Mommy. How are you feeling?" Rita asked, her concern evident. "I'm doing well, dear. The doctors and nurses here are truly wonderful and attentive. My headache has significantly lessened," Melina replied, her tone reassuring. "I'm so relieved to hear that. Soon you'll be seeing like an eagle," Rita said, her voice filled with hope. "Have you had something to eat, Mommy?" "Yes, I've eaten. I'm not a child anymore. I can manage just fine," Melina assured her, a touch of playful defiance in her voice. "All right, I'll call you again when I can. Take care for now," Rita said, her voice soft with affection. "Goodbye, sweetheart." "I love you," Melina responded, her voice tender. "I love you too," Mommy, Rita said before the call ended. It had been over a week since Rita had been living on her own while Melina continued her treatment. Though Melina was feeling significantly better, her recovery was ongoing. Rita was grateful for the support she received from Lourdes and Alberto, who had both offered their help during this challenging time. Another Friday evening arrived, and Rita set out on foot from her house, as she did each week. Usually Alberto would arrange for someone to accompany her, but this time he had been unexpectedly engrossed in urgent business. Distracted by his commitments, he seemed to have forgotten about his usual precaution. Despite this, Rita's walk was relatively short, and the street was bathed in the reassuring glow of streetlights. As she made her way, a woman emerged from a rather decrepit car parked at the curb, her voice tinged with urgency. "Hey, sweetie, could you give me a hand?" she called out, her tone laced with desperation. Rita, concerned, approached. "What's wrong?" "My phone slipped right under the seat, and I can't reach it," the woman explained, her distress apparent. "I can help with that," Rita responded, leaning into the driver's seat to locate the elusive phone. Without warning, a sharp pain exploded in her head, and darkness enveloped her. When Rita regained consciousness, she found herself bound in the back seat of the car, her hands restrained and her mouth gagged. Panic surged through her as she struggled to comprehend why this elderly woman had taken such drastic and alarming actions. What could possibly drive someone to this? The car continued to traverse a seemingly endless stretch of highway, flanked on either side by dense, impenetrable forests. The rhythmic thrum of the tires on the asphalt was occasionally punctuated by the eerie calls of nocturnal creatures. The full moon hung low in the sky, casting a cold, unfeeling light that seemed to mock Rita's dire predicament, as if the night itself were lamenting her trust in a stranger. Her throat felt parched, and the chill of fear crept steadily toward her heart, its icy grip tightening with each passing moment. Questions battered at her mind. What would happen to her mother? How could she possibly escape this nightmare? Where was this disturbed woman taking her? Perhaps she had mistaken Rita for someone else entirely. Desperate for answers, Rita's thoughts whirled chaotically, but clarity remained elusive. The car suddenly veered off the highway, its tires crunching on a gravelly forest road. The vehicle rumbled along this path for what felt like an eternity before finally coming to a halt. "Get out," the kidnapper's voice commanded, cold and authoritative, as she opened the car door. With no other option, Rita complied, her fear intensifying with each step. The dark expanse of the forest loomed around her, a foreboding and potentially perilous environment. She could feel her heart pounding in her chest, each beat echoing her growing dread. "Move forward," the voice directed, muffled and unsettling. Rita trudged ahead, her thoughts consumed by a singular, frantic desire to escape. She turned to glance back at her captor. In the pale moonlight, the woman's face appeared grotesque and nightmarish. Deep wrinkles marred her skin, and an unsightly wart protruded from her nose, giving her an appearance reminiscent of something out of a horror film. As Rita continued through the dark, menacing forest, her mind raced with desperate thoughts of how she might find a way out of this terrifying situation. "Move ahead without hesitation, and don't glance back," she commanded, her flashlight casting a narrow beam down the shadowy trail. The air grew colder, and the biting chill seeped through Rita's flimsy shirt, leaving her shivering uncontrollably. She was no longer able to distinguish whether her trembling was caused by the icy cold or by sheer terror. The encroaching darkness was oppressive, with only the moon casting a pale, spectral light through the gnarled branches of ancient trees. The occasional crunching of leaves beneath her feet echoed ominously, heightening the sense of dread that enveloped her. It felt as though she had stumbled into a nightmarish movie, where at any moment, a ghastly creature could leap from the underbrush. Yet the true horror was not in the forest, but in the relentless menace behind her, driving her forward with a ruthless, invisible force. "Stop right there," the woman's voice cut through the tension. Rita froze and turned around with hesitant dread. The kidnapper's hands were now gripping a rope. The grim possibilities raced through Rita's mind. Was she about to be strangled or bound to a tree? The uncertainty was torturous, and only the twisted mind of her captor knew what the rope was intended for. Suddenly, a low, eerie growl pierced the silence, sending a shiver down Rita's spine. "Oh no, probably just a coyote," the woman muttered, her eyes darting nervously around. But the growling was growing louder, closer. Rita held her breath, feeling the stark realization that with her hands bound, she was utterly defenseless. She cast a desperate, pleading glance at the woman. Without warning, the woman started to retreat, first at a cautious pace, and then breaking into a full sprint back the way they had come. Panic surged through Rita as she understood the gravity of her situation. Her life was hanging by a thread, vulnerable to the imminent attack of whatever beast lurked in the darkness. Desperately, Rita pressed herself against a nearby tree, her heart pounding violently in her chest. The surrounding woods were alive with unsettling rustles and menacing growls. A distinct, human-sounding cough echoed through the night. But what could a person be doing out here in such a desolate place at this hour? Had they been savaged by wild animals, left to bleed out with the predator still close by? Rita squeezed her eyes shut, fighting the overwhelming fear. The old adage of confronting danger head-on seemed absurd in the face of such overwhelming terror. She was just a frightened girl on the brink of her 16th birthday, grappling with fears far beyond her years. Without warning, the bushes parted, and a figure hurtled towards her through the gloom. Rita's muffled voice, strained through the gag, barely managed to ask, "Who's there?" A deep male voice responded from the shadows. "Sweet Mary, what on earth are you doing here, child?" the man asked, his voice a mix of astonishment and concern. The beam from his flashlight flickered in his eyes, and the moonlight highlighted his greasy, disheveled hair. "Who could have done this to you, taping your mouth shut like that?" With a swift, practiced motion, he ripped the tape off Rita's mouth. The sudden removal was excruciatingly painful, sending a jolt of agony through her, but the torment was mercifully brief. I have no idea. I honestly don't know who brought me here," Rita choked out through her tears. It was some woman with a face that looked like it belonged in a horror movie. "Come on, sweetheart. Let's get you to the cabin," the man said softly, his tone gentle as he worked to untie the ropes from around her wrists. His kindness was a stark contrast to the terror that had gripped her moments before. A cabin. Rita's mind raced with anxious thoughts. Was this some nightmarish ritual, a dark and twisted ceremony? She felt trapped, her options narrowing to either braving the treacherous forest, where coyotes and other dangers lurked, or following this man to the cabin. It was a difficult choice, but remaining in the forest seemed far more perilous. When they reached the cabin, Rita was relieved to find it wasn't the horror she had feared. Instead, it radiated an unexpected warmth and comfort. An inviting oil lamp cast a soft, soothing glow over a quaint wooden table, and in the corner stood a cozy cot with a neatly arranged bed. The air was filled with the comforting sense of honey and spices, creating a sense of calm and serenity. "I'll brew a pot of my cherished Ural tea for you," the man said with a gentle, reassuring tone, his warm smile radiating kindness as he carefully began the preparations. "Why don't you take a seat, dear, and let yourself unwind for a moment? You look like you've been through quite an ordeal. By the way, what's your name?" "Rita," she responded softly, her voice tinged with exhaustion as she rubbed her aching, swollen wrists. "Rita Torres." "Rita Torres," the man repeated thoughtfully, his eyes glinting with recognition as he filled a sturdy teapot with water. "What a beautiful name, and it suits you perfectly. You have such captivating eyes." "My eyes? What about them?" Rita asked, her tone shifting to one of curiosity, mingled with a touch of confusion. "Oh, no one special," the man replied wistfully, his gaze distant, as if his mind had wandered far away into the recesses of old, forgotten memories. It's just. Those eyes remind me of someone. A girl named Millie, who once meant everything to me, but who vanished from my life so suddenly, so painfully. Millie, Rita murmured the name, as if trying to grasp onto a fleeting memory, her mind momentarily lost in thought. I had a hamster named Millie when I was a child, she said softly, her voice laced with nostalgia. My mother always laughed about it, said I must have named her after someone she knew. I even made a little sign for her cage. One side said Millie and the other, Melina. The man's expression shifted dramatically, as though her words had unlocked something deep inside him. His hands trembled, and a package of crackers he had been holding slipped from his grasp, falling to the floor with a quiet thud. Melina, he whispered, his voice filled with an almost unbearable sadness. That name. Melina was the name of the woman I loved more than life itself. It's such a beautiful name, isn't it? Soft, like a melody, and yet it's a name that brings so much pain. Rita's curiosity deepened, and she couldn't help but ask, what happened to her? I'm so sorry if it's too painful to talk about. The man sighed, his breath heavy with the weight of memories that refused to fade. She disappeared, just like that, without a word, without a trace. We were planning our future together, talking about marriage, and then one day she was just gone, changed her number, and no matter how hard I tried, I could never find her again. You didn't stop searching for her. Rita's interest had grown into concern, her heart aching for this man who seemed so lost in his grief. I tried everything, he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. She never told me where she lived, and I spent weeks searching through records, making calls, chasing shadows. But it was as if she had vanished into thin air. It broke me. Even now, her absence haunts me, especially at night when the world falls silent, and I'm left alone with my thoughts. Rita took a sip of the tea he had brewed, its warmth spreading through her body, bringing a small measure of comfort in this strange and sorrowful moment. Do you live out here, in this isolated place? She asked gently. No, the man said, his voice a little stronger now. This is just a refuge for me, a sanctuary where I can escape, heal, and try to find some peace. I come here when the memories become too heavy, when I need to remember who I am, apart from all the hurt and loss. It's a place to reflect on life, on love, and on the things that have slipped through my fingers, things I can never get back. How heartbreaking, Rita whispered softly, her gaze distant. My mother has her own tangled history with love. She never even laid eyes on my father in person. It's something she never talks about, but deep down, I know she clings to those memories like fragile pieces of glass, too painful to hold but too precious to let go. She sighed, suddenly remembering her responsibilities. I need to make a call. I didn't show up to work today. You work? AITA asked, genuinely surprised. You're just a young girl. I sing at a bar, Rita explained, her voice heavy with the weight of her reality. We really need the money for my mom's treatment. She began searching through her backpack, a frown appearing on her face. Oh no, my phone's dead. I'll have to call from home. Adon's eyes softened as he watched her. Why don't you stay here tonight? In the morning, I'll make sure you get home safely, he offered warmly. By the way, I'm Adon. It's truly a pleasure to meet you, Rita. Rita hesitated for a moment, then nodded, a faint, weary smile touching her lips. I guess I don't really have much of a choice. Nice to meet you too. Adon, she glanced at the small cot in the corner of the cabin. I'll take you up on your offer. Thank you. Adon motioned towards the cot with a reassuring smile. Go ahead, lie down and get some rest. You'll be safe here. And what about you? Rita asked, her voice tinged with concern as she looked around the small space. Don't worry about me, Adon replied, gesturing towards a corner where a simple mattress was tucked beneath wooden shelves filled with old books and tools. I'll be fine. This cabin's seen me through many a night. For reasons she couldn't quite explain, Rita felt an unusual sense of security in Adon's presence. It was strange, considering she had only known him for barely half an hour, but there was a gentleness about him that made her feel protected. Even Sam, the large Saint Bernard, seemed to share her sense of peace. The dog curled up beside the cot, falling asleep almost instantly. As sleep began to claim her, Rita dreamed of her mother strolling along a quiet seashore, the waves gently lapping at her feet. Oddly enough, Adon was there too, walking beside her mother. They were both laughing, sharing cookies from the same tin box that Rita used to store her hard-earned savings that came from the generous coins tossed by grateful listeners along the riverbank where she sang. But while Rita drifted into the solace of sleep, Adon lay awake on his mattress, lost in the haunting embrace of memories that refused to let go. His mind wandered back to the days when happiness seemed so close, so tangible, yet forever out of reach. Melina. She had entered his life like a sudden burst of light, only to vanish just as quickly, leaving behind a shadow that lingered in his heart. He remembered the first time they met. It had been at the market, where he worked for his uncle, selling fresh vegetables. She had approached his stall with a radiant smile that had immediately captured his attention. "I love lettuce," she had said, her voice as bright and genuine as the sunlight filtering through the canopy above them. "Then you should take a whole bunch," Adon had replied with a grin, feeling a surge of joy just from being near her. Melina had laughed, shaking her head. No, you'll get in trouble if you start giving away your uncle's vegetables." But Adon wasn't listening to reason. "How about this?" he had said, his heart racing. "You agree to take a walk with me tonight." She had raised an eyebrow, her smile widening. "So that's what this is about. And here I thought you were just being generous out of the goodness of your heart." Adon had chuckled, feeling a rare moment of vulnerability. "It's both, really. I'm terrible at charming girls, but I know when my soul feels something special. So, what do you say? Will you join me for that walk?" Melina had looked at him for a moment, then nodded. "Yes, exactly. Let's take that walk." As the memory faded, Adon closed his eyes, his heart aching with the bittersweet recollection of the love that had once filled his world with hope and joy. A love that had disappeared as quickly as it had come, leaving behind only echoes and dreams that refused to fade. Well, why not take a walk? Especially since Anita asked me to come later today. She's having a romantic evening with Volino. She smiled mysteriously. "My name is Melina." "And I'm Adon. Shall we meet by the wooden elephant in the old park?" "I love that park. I'll be there around 7. Does that work?" His eyes had sparkled, and he put a huge bunch of lettuce into a paper bag and handed it to her. "Usually, people give flowers, and I give lettuce." "Thank you. By the way, I love lettuce more than any flowers that die in a vase on the windowsill." Melina had smiled and gone briskly about her business. Adon lived with his uncle and aunt. Their love was divided between their daughter and their nephew, who lost his parents early. Laura got married and moved to the neighboring town, visiting her relatives only occasionally. They were happy to hear that Adon had met a girl, but he didn't hurry to introduce Melina to them until he was sure that their feelings were mutual. Melina lived with a friend. They rented some shack and worked together in a cafeteria. Meeting Adon turned her whole life upside down. She fell in love for the first time in her 19 years. They strolled, talked about everything, and kissed, deliberately wandering into the part of the park where no one was around. They felt so good together. Such happiness is only felt in childhood when you are surrounded by love and care. They often met at Adon's friend's place. He often left the city and kindly allowed the lovers to use his absence. They dreamed of a wedding and their own place, even if it was tiny. Adon was still finishing medical school, then he was almost a therapist. He came to town only for vacations, and the rest of the time, he lived in the capital. He planned to stay there until he met his Melina. But one day she didn't show up for their date, just didn't show up, although they had agreed and called each other literally half an hour before the meeting. She had been cheerful and said she missed him and couldn't wait to see him. In response to his numerous calls, he only heard, "The subscriber is temporarily unavailable." That's when he regretted not knowing her friend, not knowing where exactly they lived. He didn't even know her last name. Such foolishness in a person's life sometimes happens to love to the point of madness, but not to ask for a last name and address. Aden searched, but Melina seemed to have vanished into thin air. Maybe she found someone else, maybe she didn't, but she just left and never returned. The guy suffered, he lost weight drastically, and his uncle and aunt worried a lot about their nephew, trying to calm him down. Then it was time to go back to school. Aden threw himself into his university affairs fiercely. He decided that, in spite of everyone, he would be a good doctor, and he wouldn't waste a minute of his life on nonsense like pretty girls with brisk gaits. Aden never met his soulmate. The hole in his heart never healed. At times it would start bleeding again. That's when he would take time off and go to the woods. It made things slightly easier. It had been over 15 years already. Aden had turned into a hardened bachelor. It was tough living alone after all. And Melina. What happened to her? How did her life turn out? Aden had no answer to that question, nor could he. They had drifted apart like specks on a seashore, but he never stopped thinking about that nymph who had captured his heart forever. He couldn't be angry with her, he simply loved her. He himself didn't understand anymore whether he loved her or just the memories of those happy weeks, only them from that summer. Rita was jolted awake by the warm nudge of Sam's nose against her cheek. She blinked her eyes open, greeted by the sight of the St. Bernard wagging his tail energetically and offering her an affectionate lick on the nose. "You're such a sweetheart," Sam, Rita whispered with a sleepy smile, stroking his large, furry head. The dog leaned into her touch, clearly enjoying the attention. "Good morning," came Aden's voice as he entered the cabin, his tone soft and calm. "How did you sleep?" "Good morning," Rita replied, sitting up and stretching. "I slept like I used to when I was a kid back when Miss Rosa was still alive, and we lived with her while Mom took care of her. She left us her apartment in her will, and we still live there." "That's wonderful," Aden said, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. "There's something about the forest. It seems to wash away all our worries, even if just for a little while." He suppressed a sigh and then offered a warm smile. "Shall we have some tea before we head out?" "Yes, I'm ready," Rita nodded, rising to her feet. Aden pointed her toward the wash basin and toilet behind the cabin. After freshening up, they both stepped out into the crisp morning air, with Sam trotting happily behind them. As they drove along the winding road, Aden broke the silence. "How's your mom doing? You mentioned she needed treatment." Rita's face clouded with concern. She started losing her vision all of a sudden. "The doctor said it can happen from extreme stress, something about blood vessels narrowing. I don't really understand it all, but it's serious. The treatment, it's expensive." Aden glanced at her, his expression thoughtful. "Let me help you too. I'm a doctor myself, though I don't specialize in eyes." Rita looked at him with gratitude in her eyes. "Thank you," she said softly. "She's already getting treatment. That's why I sing at Alberto's bar. It's called Insight. Have you heard of it?" "Insight," Aden repeated, his brow furrowing in thought. "Is that the one with the little fountain that has lights around it?" "Yes, that's the one," Rita confirmed. "I sing there on Fridays and Saturdays." Aden smiled. "Do you sing well?" Rita shrugged modestly. "People seem to like it." "Well then, I guess I know where I'll be going to enjoy the singing of a lovely young lady," Aden teased with a grin, as he turned the car toward Rita's home. As they pulled up to her building, Rita was about to step out when Adam handed her a business card. "Just in case," he said, his voice calm but serious. Rita took the card, nodding her thanks, and then stepped out of the car. Before she could even make it to the entrance, she was met by a flurry of excitement from Lourdes, who stood waiting for her. "Rita, thank the Virgin Mary. Where have you been? What on earth is going on?" Alberto is losing his mind. He's practically tearing every secret out of Bianca, and now her mother is threatening to kill herself. Lourdes exclaimed, practically trembling with agitation. "Who is Bianca?" Rita asked, hugging Lourdes briefly while waving goodbye to Adon. Confusion clouded her mind as she tried to make sense of the whirlwind of information. "Come on, let's get inside," Lourdes urged, pulling Rita toward the door. "We need to call Alberto before he does something drastic." Rita followed her inside, still trying to wrap her head around the situation. "Can you please explain who Bianca is and why Alberto is going to kill her mother?" she asked, her patience wearing thin. It felt like her life had suddenly turned into some sort of intense thriller. Lourdes glanced at her, her eyes filled with worry. "Bianca is. Well, it's complicated. But you need to know that her mother has been caught up in all sorts of trouble, and Alberto, well, he's not exactly known for handling things calmly. We need to get ahead of this before it spirals even more out of control." "Bianca used to work at the bar before you did," Lourdes began, her voice tinged with both frustration and concern. She sang too, though her voice could never match yours. But at the time, Alberto didn't have much of a choice, so he kept her around. Then, just a few days before Alberto's meeting with you, Bianca fell ill. Almost immediately, Alberto informed her that her services were no longer needed, and he gave her something that resembled severance pay. Naturally, Bianca's mother didn't take it well. She stormed into the bar, causing a huge scene when Bianca told her what had happened. The woman was furious and threatened to set fire to the bar and kill anyone who dared take her daughter's place. Rita's eyes widened in disbelief. She actually said that. Lourdes nodded grimly. Yes, but Alberto dismissed her threats as nothing more than the ravings of a hysterical woman. He forgot about it as soon as she left. It only resurfaced in his mind when you didn't show up for work. That's when he started to worry. Rita could feel her heart racing as Lourdes continued. Alberto went straight to Bianca's house and confronted her impulsive mother, but Bianca was home alone. She had no idea where her mother was. Apparently, Candida never felt the need to tell her daughter where she was going or who she was with. Typical of her, from what I've heard. Lourdes paused for a moment before resuming her story. Alberto decided to wait for Candida to return. He parked his car a few houses away, hid behind some bushes, and kept a watchful eye on the house. Around 5 in the morning, she finally came back, clearly intoxicated. Alberto jumped out from his hiding spot and confronted her. He threatened to call the police if she didn't tell him where you were. Of course, she claimed not to know anything about his new singer, saying that you couldn't hold a candle to her daughter. Rita's stomach churned with anxiety as she listened. Did he believe her? Lourdes shook her head. No, not for a second. Alberto was ready to force the truth out of her if he had to, but Candida wasn't talking. That's when he noticed something odd, a silicone mask lying on the seat of her old sedan. It was too strange to be a coincidence. Rita shuddered at the thought of what might have happened. What did he do? He kept pressing her for answers, Lourdes said. And when that didn't work, he pushed her into the car, got behind the wheel, and headed straight for the police station. That's when Candida must have realized that things were getting serious. She finally caved and said she saw a girl matching your description hitchhiking on the highway. But Alberto didn't believe her. He pulled out a stun gun, he always carries one. just in case, and made it clear that he wasn't leaving without the truth. Rita's breath caught in her throat. What happened next? Lourdes' expression grew more intense as she recounted the moment. Alberto warned her that things were going to get ugly if she didn't talk. His voice was so low and dangerous that Candida started to tremble. She tried to push the device away, but Alberto was relentless. Rita felt a chill run down her spine. Did she tell him anything? She stammered, claiming she didn't know where you were, but Alberto wasn't buying it. Lourdes replied. He knew she was hiding something, but at that moment he wasn't sure what it was. Rita felt a mix of fear and confusion swirl inside her. The situation was far more complicated than she had realized. Life had indeed taken a strange and dangerous turn, and she had no idea what to expect next. Alberto's grip tightened around his device as he leaned in closer to Candida, his eyes boring into hers with a dangerous intensity that made her breath catch in her throat. "Let's go," he ordered, his voice sharp and commanding. "But I'm warning you. If you're lying to me," he left the threat unfinished, but its ominous weight hung heavy in the air. Candida's words spilled out in a frantic rush, her fear almost tangible. "I'm not sure, but maybe she's in the forest. She asked me to drive her there earlier." Her voice trembled, every word betraying her anxiety. "People always whispered about Candida around here," Lourdes said in a hushed tone, as if speaking the rumors aloud might summon some old ghost. "They say she served a long sentence in her youth, but no one knows exactly what for." Alberto had heard those stories before, though. By the time they reached the turnoff to the forest road, it was around 7:30 in the evening. The tension in the car was thick, and the silence between them felt suffocating. Suddenly, Alberto's phone rang, slicing through the quiet like a knife. Lourdes. Alberto answered, a strange mixture of surprise and anxiety in his voice. "Yes, it's me," came the familiar reply, mimicking his tone. "Are you sure? Is she safe?" Without hesitation, Alberto jerked the wheel, turning the car around sharply and heading back the way they had come. His voice turned cold and hard as steel. "If I see you or Bianca anywhere near Rita again, you'll both rot in prison," he threatened, his words dripping with venom. There was no doubt in Candida's mind that Alberto had the connections and influence to back up his words. The mere thought of spending the rest of her life behind bars sent a chill down her spine, and she fell silent, realizing that Alberto wasn't bluffing. While all of this unfolded, Melina was quietly making her way back home from the clinic. She had chosen to return by train, not wanting to alert anyone to her arrival. The journey had been long and solitary, but there was a sense of purpose in her steps. She wanted to surprise her daughter. Rita, oblivious to everything that had been happening, was just about to take a bite of her cereal when she looked up and saw her mother standing in the doorway. The sight of her mother, after so much time and uncertainty, filled her with a wave of overwhelming emotion. "Mom." "Mommy," Rita cried out, the shock and joy mixing together as she rushed towards her mother, her eyes wide and brimming with tears. "Why didn't you tell me you were coming back? How did you get here?" She flung her arms around her mother, holding her tightly as if she were afraid to let go. Melina smiled softly, though a trace of weariness lingered in her eyes. "I took the train," she said simply, holding up a small bag with a familiar crinkle. "And look, I brought your favorite cookies." "Mama, I missed you so much," Rita cried, throwing her arms around her mother, hugging her tightly. She buried her face in her mother's shoulder, savoring the comfort of her warmth and presence. It was as if Rita feared that if she let go, her mother might disappear again. "My sweet girl," Melina whispered, her voice rich with affection as she gently stroked Rita's back. "I've missed you more than I could ever express." Rita pulled back just slightly, enough to look into her mother's face, her eyes filled with concern. "How are you feeling, Mom? Are you really okay?" Melina's smile was reassuring, though tinged with uncertainty that she tried to mask. "I'm fine," she said softly. "The doctor told me it might take a bit longer for my vision to fully recover, but I'm doing much better." Rita's brow furrowed with worry, her heart heavy with questions. "Did he say why this happened? Why you suddenly lost your vision?" Melina hesitated for a moment, as if weighing her words carefully. "He thinks it's a combination of things: stress, fatigue, maybe even something genetic. But don't worry, sweetheart. I'm going to be okay, I promise." For a moment, silence hung between them, thick with unspoken thoughts. Melina's gaze drifted away, as if she were struggling with something deep within her, something she wasn't quite ready to share. Her eyes grew distant, lost in the maze of her own thoughts. Rita noticed the shift in her mother's demeanor and gently squeezed her hand. "Mom," she asked softly, her voice laced with concern, "are you sure everything's okay?" Melina blinked, snapping out of her reverie. She gave her daughter a reassuring smile, though the shadows of whatever weighed on her mind lingered just beneath the surface. "Yes, Riri, everything's okay," she said, trying to sound confident. I've been thinking a lot lately, that's all. But let's not worry about that now. Let's enjoy our time together." Rita nodded, though a small knot of unease still curled in her chest. For now, she would let it go, but she couldn't shake the feeling that there was something her mother wasn't telling her. "Mom, please don't keep quiet," Rita pleaded, her voice quivering with emotion. "This has to be something really serious, right? Is it going to happen again?" Tears welled up in her eyes, and she couldn't hold them back anymore. She had been trying to stay strong for so long, but now everything felt too heavy, too overwhelming. The weight of it all was crushing her spirit, and she felt like a little girl again, like the frightened 15-year-old who would bury herself in her big pink bear whenever the world became too much to handle. "It's just a shadow from the past," Riri Melina said softly, using the nickname that had always brought Rita comfort when she was younger. The word wrapped around her like a warm blanket, but it did little to ease the fear that gripped her now. "The past? What do you mean? Did you work in a chemical factory or something?" Rita asked, her confusion growing with each passing second. Melina shook her head, her shoulders sagging with the weight of whatever burden she was carrying. With a long, weary sigh, she sank into a chair, her legs too tired to keep her standing. "No, nothing like that," she murmured, her voice distant. "I saw him recently. At the supermarket. A little over a month ago." Rita's heart skipped a beat, a wave of anxiety crashing over her. "Mom, don't scare me like that. Who did you see? Sasquatch or something?" She tried to joke, but her voice trembled, betraying her true feelings. "Your father," Melina said quietly, almost as if she was afraid to say it out loud. Rita froze, her breath catching in her throat. "What? But you always told me you didn't know where he was, that he had a family." Melina nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "That's true. I don't know where he is now, but I saw him at the supermarket, near our house." "Did you talk to him?" Rita asked, her mind spinning with disbelief. How could her father, the man who had been nothing more than a distant memory, suddenly be so close? "No, of course not," Melina said, shaking her head. "But I did something I probably shouldn't have done." Rita's heart pounded in her chest. "What did you do, Mom?" Melina hesitated, guilt flickering in her eyes. I took a picture of him. He didn't see me, didn't even notice me. But I couldn't help myself. I just needed to remember, to have something of him, even if it was just a photograph." Rita stared at her mother, struggling to process what she had just heard. The man who had been a ghost in their lives for so long was suddenly real, standing in the aisles of a supermarket. And now, there was a picture of him, a piece of the past that neither of them had expected to resurface. "Do you still have it?" Rita asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Melina nodded, slowly pulling out her phone. "Yes, I do." Rita's eyes widened with concern. "What do you mean? What did you do? Did you kiss him in the supermarket or something?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Rita, stop making fun of me," Melina said sharply, her tone suddenly serious. "I took a picture of him. He didn't see me, didn't notice anything, but I took his picture." Rita stared at her mother, her mind reeling as she tried to process what she was hearing. The idea of seeing her father, the man who had been nothing more than a ghostly figure in her life, suddenly felt all too real. Do you want to see your father?" Melina asked, her voice softening as she pulled out her cell phone, her hand trembling slightly. I'm not sure. But yeah, show me," Rita said hesitantly, leaning closer to get a better look at the faded screen of her mom's old smartphone. Melina found the picture and handed the phone to Rita. As soon as Rita saw the image, she suddenly jumped to her feet, her eyes wide with shock. No way, this can't be." "What? What is it? What can't be?" Melina asked, her confusion deepening as she looked at her daughter, trying to understand what had just happened. "Do you two know each other?" Rita gasped, her voice trembling with shock. "Imagine that," Melina replied, her tone heavy with irony. "Yes, we met just the other day. He saved me from some crazy woman." "Mom, what do you mean? Is that how I raised you, daughter?" "Wait, what crazy woman?" Melina's voice sharpened with a mix of worry and confusion. Rita took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment. This was the time to be honest, the moment she had dreaded but also felt was long overdue. She began to spill everything about the bar, about the mysterious encounters, even about the emotion she hadn't fully understood until now. Her heart raced in her chest like a caged bird, fluttering wildly, desperate to break free from the confines of her secrets. "Mom, he loved you. He's loved you all his life," Rita said, tears welling up in her eyes. "And that woman, the one with the baby. I overheard her say to the child, 'Say hello to Daddy.'" Melina blinked back her own tears, the weight of Rita's words pressing down on her chest like a stone. Her large gray eyes, usually so strong, softened with vulnerability as a few tears slipped down her cheeks. "After everything, I left. I ran away to a neighboring town with my girlfriend. We stayed at her aunt's place for a while, and eventually I moved us here. You changed your number and disappeared from his life, didn't you?" Rita asked, her voice steady but her gaze piercing, searching for the truth in her mother's eyes. Melina nodded, her expression filled with regret. "Yes, I had no other choice. I had to start over." "But Mom," Rita's voice trailed off, her thoughts swirling with so many questions. "Didn't you ever wonder? Didn't you want to know the truth? Didn't you want to find out if he had moved on, if he had a family, if you were just someone he once knew for a brief moment?" Melina shook her head slowly, her face etched with sorrow. "He doesn't have a family, Riri. He's been wandering through life, lost and alone. When I saw him, it was like seeing someone who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for far too long. The pain in his eyes, it was like a wound that never healed." Her voice trembled with empathy. "I felt. I don't know why, but I felt like I could trust him again. There was a comfort in his presence, a familiarity, like no time had passed at all. But I just couldn't face him, not after all these years." "But who was that woman with the baby then?" Melina asked, trying to piece it all together. She absent-mindedly tucked a stray lock of hair behind her ear, her brow furrowing in thought. "Maybe she was just baptizing the boy," Rita suggested with a small shrug, trying to make sense of it herself. "He could have been the godfather, right? It doesn't necessarily mean what we think it does." Melina sighed deeply, her mind swirling with conflicting thoughts. She wasn't sure what to believe anymore, But one thing was clear: her past had never truly left her, and now it seemed to be knocking on the door of her present, demanding to be reckoned with. Melina fell into a contemplative silence, her thoughts drifting far away, entangled in memories and regrets. Meanwhile, Rita's mind was spinning with the astonishing realization of how her parents had spent all these years separated, isolated in their own loneliness and pain, all due to a tragic misunderstanding. It was almost surreal that she now found herself feeling grateful toward Bianca's erratic mother, a woman whose unintentional actions had unknowingly bridged the gap between Rita and her father, a man she had never expected to encounter. It was a miracle, in a way. Rita had never seen her mother radiate such pure happiness before. It was as if a vital piece of her mother's soul, long lost, had finally been returned to her. The sadness that had once clouded her mother's eyes had given way to a brilliant sparkle of hope. Now, the man who had once been absent from her mother's life was here, ready to stand beside her, ready to shield her from the harshness of this vast, unpredictable world. As the waves whispered softly against the shore, Rita sat quietly on the warm sand beside Monica, who was cradling her baby, trying to soothe her restless child. Alberto had stepped away to take a phone call, leaving the two women in a peaceful moment of shared tranquility. "She just won't fall asleep," Monica sighed, her voice tinged with exhaustion. The frustration of trying to calm her fussy baby was clearly wearing on her. Rita, noticing the weariness in Monica's eyes, offered her a gentle smile. "How about I rock her for a bit? You look like you could use a break," she said kindly, already reaching out her arms to take the baby. Monica, visibly relieved, nodded gratefully and handed her daughter over to Rita. The moment the little one was nestled in Rita's arms, a sense of calm washed over her. Holding the baby close, she gazed down at her tiny, peaceful face, feeling a deep warmth bloom in her heart. "I'll sing you a lullaby," Rita said affectionately, her voice soft and soothing. "It's the same one my mom used to sing to me when I was a little girl. I'm sure it will help you drift off to sleep." And so, in a tender, lilting voice, Rita began to sing. The wax of the candle melts quietly. It's already night outside. Sleep, my beauty, my gift from heaven. My daughter. The gentle wind rustles the curtain softly. The golden poppy flower. My baby sleeps. Your angel will take the silvery cobweb. With love, he'll weave pure love into your sleep. The firmament will illuminate with its radiance. A star will shine. May it guard the tender sleep of little children. May it guard the tender sleep of little children. Monica listened quietly, her exhaustion melting away as she watched Rita rock her daughter. The melody was simple, yet so full of warmth and love that it seemed to wrap the baby in a soft cocoon of peace. Slowly, the little one's eyelids fluttered closed, and soon enough, she was fast asleep, cradled in the safety of Rita's gentle embrace. "That was beautiful," Monica whispered, her voice full of gratitude as she carefully took her daughter back and placed her in the stroller. "She's finally asleep, and I've been trying for so long." Rita smiled, her heart full. The future no longer seemed so uncertain. She had made up her mind she would follow her dreams and enroll in the conservatory. And with her parents' love and support behind her, she felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The sea breeze carried away the last of her lingering doubts, while the ocean waves brought with them a sense of joy and endless possibility, as vast as the horizon before her. Monica looked at Rita with admiration shining in her eyes. "God, I could listen to you sing for hours," she whispered, her voice hushed with reverence as she gently took her now sleeping daughter from Rita's arms and placed her in the stroller. "She's finally asleep. And I've been trying for so long. You truly have a gift." Rita smiled in response, her heart filling with warmth and renewed hope. The future no longer felt daunting. Instead, it gleamed with possibility. She had made her decision. She would enroll in the conservatory, pursue her passion, and embrace the music that had always been her solace. And with her parents standing beside her, ready to support her every step of the way, Rita felt an unshakable confidence that this new chapter in her life would be filled with promise and joy. As the gentle sea breeze brushed against her face, carrying away the last remnants of doubt, Rita let out a soft sigh of contentment. The vast ocean before her seemed to reflect the boundless opportunities that lay ahead, as if whispering of an incredible happiness waiting just beyond the horizon. What have you learned from Rita's story? Has her journey inspired you to think about the power of perseverance and love in your own life? Please share one lesson you've learned and how you plan to apply it in the comments below. If you liked this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel.